The Woodlawn neighborhood in Southside Chicago is a microcosm of urban transformation, reflecting broader socio-political dynamics in American history. Once a prestigious area in the 1940s, characterized by beautiful three-story homes and a vibrant community, Woodlawn was a desirable location for middle-class families. However, restrictive housing policies enforced racial segregation, effectively ensuring that only white residents could inhabit the area. This systemic exclusion laid the groundwork for the profound changes that would shape the neighborhood in the decades to come. The tides began to turn in 1948 with the landmark Supreme Court ruling that struck down redlining laws. This decision opened the doors to a more diverse population, allowing African American families to move into neighborhoods like Woodlawn. The reaction from the predominantly white residents was immediate and severe. Many fled to the suburbs, leading to a dramatic demographic shift. By 1952, the neighborhood was roughly 50% African American, marking a pivotal transition in its community dynamics. The influx of African American residents did not come without conflict. The remaining white residents formed groups to maintain control, the most notable being a gang called the Rebels, primarily consisting of Italian and Eastern European youths who had long held sway in the area. Despite their small size of around 30 members, the Rebels were rough and territorial, particularly towards the new African American residents. Their presence intensified the social tensions that would shape the neighborhood for years to come. The demographic shift was not merely a change in the ethnic composition of the neighborhood, it represented a larger struggle for power and identity. African American families moving into Woodlawn sought not only housing but also a sense of belonging in a society that had systematically marginalized them. As they settled in, they began to establish roots and community organizations, seeking to build a new life amid the tensions surrounding them. In response to the rebels, the African American residents sought protection and solidarity, leading to the formation of the Blackstone Raiders in 1954. Named after their operational base on South Blackstone Avenue, this group emerged as a community response to the growing tension. Initially, the Raiders and the rebels engaged in minor skirmishes, but as the Raiders grew in numbers and influence, the conflicts escalated. A pivotal moment occurred on March 11, 1957, when the rebels attacked a Raiders member named Alvin Palmer, marking the first bloodshed in what would become an ongoing cycle of violence. The Raiders informed the Chicago police, leading to arrests of the rebels. This incident illuminated the vulnerability of the African American community in Woodlawn and underscored the need for organized protection. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. The Raiders were initially driven by a sense of community and the desire to protect their neighborhoods from external threats. However, as their influence grew, they began to adopt a more aggressive posture, retaliating against the rebels and expanding their territory. This shift marked the beginning of a more entrenched gang culture in Woodlawn. Amid this tumult, two families, the Harston family and the Fort family, moved to Woodlawn in 1955. The Harston family, wealthy and well-connected, purchased a large three-story home, while the Fort family, hailing from a less affluent background, struggled to make ends meet. Despite their different socioeconomic statuses, the families bonded over the shared experience of raising sons who would become natural leaders in the community. Jeff Fort from the Fort family gravitated towards the Blackstone Raiders and quickly established himself as a significant figure, particularly after Alvin Palmer's death. Meanwhile, Eugene Harston rallied his friends to form the Harper Boys, named after their main location on Harper Street. Their primary goal was to confront the rebels, leading to the eventual expulsion of the rebels from Woodlawn by 1959. The alliance between the Harston and Fort families exemplified the broader community dynamics in Woodlawn. Their sons' leadership roles reflected a growing sense of identity among African American youth who were increasingly asserting their place in a neighborhood that had historically marginalized them. This alliance was also a reflection of the broader socio-political environment in the United States during the 1950s. As the civil rights movement gained momentum, young people in marginalized communities sought to assert their rights and challenge the status quo. This desire for agency manifested in various ways, including the formation of gangs that provided a sense of identity and belonging in a society that often devalued them. With the rebels eliminated, a power struggle ensued between the Raiders and the Harper Boys. In 1960, following skirmishes over territory, Jeff Fort and Eugene Harston recognized the need for unity. They merged their groups to form the Blackstone Rangers, a coalition that aimed to consolidate power and establish order in the neighborhood. The Blackstone Rangers quickly grew in strength, with recruitment efforts extending to local schools, churches, and youth hangouts. Jeff Fort proved to be a skilled recruiter, and by 1964, the Rangers had expanded their influence beyond Chicago to the surrounding suburbs. This growth was not just about territory, it was also about establishing a sense of identity and community for the youth involved. As the Rangers solidified their power, they began to adopt more formal structures. They organized social events, created mentorship programs, and sought to portray themselves as protectors of the community rather than mere gang members. This rebranding was crucial for attracting new recruits and gaining the support of local residents, many of whom were desperate for leadership amid the chaos. The Rangers' ability to provide resources and support for local youth set them apart from traditional gangs. They organized basketball tournaments, talent shows, and community service projects, positioning themselves as a force for good in a neighborhood struggling with violence and poverty. However, these positive initiatives coexisted with their criminal activities, creating a complex dynamic that would continue to shape the neighborhood. By 1966, the Blackstone Rangers had transformed into the Black Pea Stones, with the P symbolizing peace, prosperity, people, and power. However, the reality on the ground was starkly different. The Pea Stones often resorted to criminal activities to maintain control over their territory, including extortion and drug trafficking. Jeff Fort, who maintained connections with the mafia, effectively taxed local businesses for protection, instilling fear in those who refused to comply. The gang's ability to exert control over local businesses was indicative of the socio-economic challenges faced by the residents of Woodlawn. Many were living in poverty, and the Pea Stones filled a vacuum left by the lack of legitimate economic opportunities. This exploitation of local businesses allowed the gang to finance its operations and expand its influence, but it also entrenched the cycle of violence and economic hardship that plagued the community. As the Black Pea Stones gained notoriety, their rivalry with other gangs intensified, particularly with the Black Disciples led by David Barksdale. The confrontations between these factions were marked by brutal violence, drawing the attention of law enforcement and prompting the city to take action. Police presence in Woodlawn increased, leading to frequent raids and arrests, yet the cycle of violence continued unabated. Despite the chaos, Jeff Fort's political connections flourished. In 1967, President Lyndon B. Johnson initiated the Office of Economic Opportunity, aimed at improving conditions in impoverished neighborhoods. Surprisingly, both Fort and Barksdale received nearly $937,000 in federal funding for a new organization known as the Woodlawn Organization, which was ostensibly dedicated to job training and community development. This irony was palpable. The man behind a gang that perpetuated violence and crime was entrusted with federal funds to help the very community he had exploited. Fort positioned himself as a community leader, using the resources to bolster his reputation. The Woodlawn Organization became a front, allowing him to further exert control over local affairs while maintaining the facade of a community advocate. The funds allocated to the Woodlawn Organization were intended to address the underlying socio-economic issues that had fueled gang activity. However, the misappropriation of these resources underscored the deep-seated corruption and disorganization of local governance. While Fort was publicly praised for his supposed community work, he continued to lead the Black Pea Stones with an iron fist, effectively blurring the lines between community leadership and gang leadership. The government's reliance on figures like Fort to implement social programs reflected a broader trend in American urban policy. Officials often turned to local leaders, regardless of their backgrounds, hoping to harness their influence for community betterment. This reliance inadvertently legitimized gang leaders and complicated efforts to combat crime and violence. However, cracks began to show in the foundation of the Blackstone Rangers. In 1968, after a series of violent encounters, David Barksdale sought to demonstrate the Pea Stones' vulnerability by driving through their territory, ultimately leading to a violent confrontation. This incident illustrated the underlying tensions and the fragility of any truce that had been brokered. As the 1970s progressed, the situation deteriorated further. On August 14, 1970, a gang confrontation in a back alley near a hotel resulted in the intervention of police, who had been closely monitoring the gang dynamics. This heightened scrutiny eventually led to federal investigations into Fort's operations. In 1972, after a lengthy investigation, Fort was arrested for misusing federal funds related to the Woodlawn Organization. The prosecution argued that he had pocketed money intended for job training programs, while Fort claimed the discrepancies were the result of mismanagement rather than theft. The case against him was weak, but it marked the beginning of the end for the P-Stones as an organized entity. Following Fort's arrest, the gang fragmented and the remaining members splintered into smaller factions. The leadership vacuum left by Fort's departure allowed rival gangs to capitalize on the weakened structure, leading to a resurgence of violence and instability in Woodlawn. By the late 1980s, the El Rukin gang emerged as a prominent force in Woodlawn, taking advantage of the chaos left in the wake of the Black P-Stones. The El Rukin, originally a faction of the Blackstone Rangers, was known for its violent clashes with other gangs, including the Vice Lords and Latin Kings. Their activities drew significant attention from law enforcement, culminating in a federal investigation that would expose their operations and connections to organized crime. In 1986, the FBI launched Operation Fistful of Steel, leading to multiple arrests and convictions of El Rukin members for drug trafficking and racketeering. The crackdown resulted in the imprisonment of many gang leaders, creating a momentary lull in gang activity. However, the structural issues in Woodlawn, poverty, unemployment, and lack of opportunity, remained unresolved, paving the way for other gangs to fill the void left by the El Rukin's decline. Despite these setbacks, the legacy of the Blackstone Rangers and the El Rukin continues to resonate within Woodlawn. The community is marked by the scars of violence, but it also reflects a spirit of resilience and hope. In the aftermath of gang violence, community organizations have emerged, working to address the root causes of poverty, violence, and disenfranchisement. Today, Woodlawn is experiencing a renaissance, with revitalization efforts focused on economic development, affordable housing, and educational initiatives. Residents are reclaiming their neighborhoods, striving to create a better future for the next generation. Community leaders are working collaboratively with local government and organizations to rebuild trust and foster a sense of belonging. These revitalization efforts have taken various forms, from establishing community gardens and youth mentorship programs to fostering entrepreneurship through local business incubators. Residents are becoming more engaged in local governance, advocating for their rights, and demanding better services from the city. This grassroots activism is crucial for transforming Woodlawn into a thriving community that reflects the desires and aspirations of its residents. As part of these revitalization initiatives, community organizations have prioritized educational programs, recognizing that access to quality education is fundamental to breaking the cycle of poverty. They have collaborated with local schools, providing tutoring services, after-school programs, and college preparation workshops to empower youth and equip them with the skills necessary for success. The history of Woodlawn serves as a powerful reminder of the complex interplay between race, economics, and community identity. The rise of gangs like the Blackstone Rangers and the El Rukin was not merely a story of violence, it was a reflection of systemic failures that left African American communities marginalized and vulnerable. As these gangs sought to fill the void left by inadequate social services, they inadvertently perpetuated cycles of violence and poverty. In recognizing this history, it is essential to honor the resilience and strength of the residents who have fought against adversity. The community's ongoing journey toward healing and revitalization illustrates the importance of collective action and the potential for transformation in the face of historical trauma. As Woodlawn moves forward, it faces challenges, but it also carries the legacy of resilience. The efforts to foster economic development and community engagement serve as a testament to the power of hope and determination. Residents are not merely passive victims of violence, they are active agents of change, working to reshape their neighborhoods and reclaim their narratives. To understand Woodlawn fully, one must delve into its historical context, which is deeply intertwined with the broader narrative of Chicago's African American community. Founded in the 19th century, Woodlawn initially thrived as a residential area for affluent white families. However, with the Great Migration in the early 20th century, a significant number of African Americans moved to Chicago from the South, seeking better economic opportunities and escaping racial segregation. As Black families settled in Woodlawn, the demographic shift began to reshape the community. The influx of African Americans led to tensions with the existing white residents, resulting in racial segregation and discrimination. This struggle for civil rights and equality would resonate through the decades, setting the stage for the emergence of gang culture as a response to systemic injustices. The 1960s were a particularly pivotal period for Woodlawn. The civil rights movement galvanized residents, leading to significant activism aimed at dismantling racial barriers. Community leaders emerged, advocating for housing rights, equal access to education, and job opportunities. However, as these efforts encountered resistance, frustration grew among young people who felt marginalized and ignored. This discontent contributed to the rise of gangs as they offered a sense of identity, belonging, and protection in an increasingly hostile environment. The Black Pea Stones and later the El Rukn were not simply criminal enterprises, they were products of the socio-economic landscape of Woodlawn. Gangs filled the void left by a lack of legitimate opportunities. Young people found camaraderie, purpose, and financial gain in gang affiliation, even as it led to cycles of violence and tragedy. The impact of gang culture on the community was profound. Families were torn apart and lives were lost, creating a sense of despair that permeated through generations. Yet amid this turmoil, stories of resilience emerged. Residents began to organize against the violence, seeking to reclaim their neighborhoods and their futures. In response to the gang violence and its effects on the community, grassroots movements began to emerge. Local organizations and residents banded together to address the underlying issues contributing to gang activity. They sought to create safe spaces for youth and provide alternatives to gang involvement. One significant initiative was the establishment of youth centers that offered recreational activities, mentorship programs, and educational resources. These centers provided young people with the tools to succeed, fostering a sense of belonging outside gang affiliations. Volunteers, often drawn from the community itself, dedicated their time and resources to help guide the youth and instill a sense of pride in their neighborhoods. One powerful example of such an initiative is the Woodlawn Community Development Corporation, WCDC, which has been instrumental in revitalizing the area. The WCDC focuses on economic development, affordable housing, and community engagement, working to address the socio-economic issues that have historically plagued Woodlawn. Their efforts include the creation of small business incubators to encourage entrepreneurship among residents, providing them with the skills and resources needed to thrive. The heart of Woodlawn's transformation lies in its people. Personal stories of resilience highlight the community's spirit and determination to overcome adversity. One such story is that of a former gang member who turned his life around and became a youth mentor. After years of struggling with the consequences of gang life, he found purpose in helping others avoid the same pitfalls he had faced. His journey from despair to empowerment embodies the community's resilience and illustrates the possibility of change. Additionally, local artists have played a significant role in Woodlawn's revitalization. Street art has transformed vacant lots and abandoned buildings into canvases of hope and expression. Murals depicting the history of the community and its struggles serve as a reminder of both the challenges faced and the strength of the residents. These artistic expressions foster a sense of pride and belonging among residents, uniting them in their shared experiences. Looking ahead, Woodlawn stands at a crossroads. The revitalization efforts initiated by community organizations and residents signal a shift toward a more promising future. However, challenges remain. The legacy of violence and poverty cannot be erased overnight, and the community continues to grapple with issues such as crime, unemployment, and housing instability. Woodlawn's legacy is one of struggle and determination as residents confront the lingering effects of systemic injustice. The neighborhood's journey from a vibrant community to a battleground of gang violence and ultimately to a space of revitalization illustrates the resilience of its residents. As the community continues to evolve, it stands as a testament to the power of collective action and the enduring hope for a brighter future. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more stories like this, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to join the membership team for more exclusive content. Thanks for watching.